with that, we'll go ahead and start today with no earthquakes here. So with that, we'll start with 3 Oms, then Om Sahanavatu and the opening prayers, and then we will do lead and repeat style for 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll go back to 1 and chant through until that point. So, सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. All right, so now we'll look at verse number 2. Sangat satsu vidhiyatam Sangat satsu vidhiyatam Bhagavato Bhaktir dridadhiyatam Dridadhiyatam Shantyadif parichiyatam Shantyadif parichiyatam Dridataram Karmashu santyajyatam Sadvidvanupasripyatam Sadvidvanupasripyatam Pratidinam Tatpaduka sevyatam Brahmaikaksharamardhyatam Shruti Shiro Vakyam Samakarnyatam. Now verse 3. Vakyartascha vicharyatam Shruti Shiraf Pakshas Samashriyataam Dustarkat suviramyatam Shrutimatas Tarkonusandhiyatam Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam Aharahar Garvah parityajyatam Deheham matirujyatam Buddhajanair Vadah parityajyatam. Then now verse number 4. Kshut vyadhishcha chikitsatam. So it's kshud vyadhishcha, and then chikitsatam. Yeah. Kshut vyadhishcha chikitsatam pratidinam bhikshaushadham bhujyatam Svadvannam natu yachyatam. Vannam natu vidivashat. Praptena santushyatam. Shitoshnadhivishahyatam. Natu vrita. Vakyam samucharyatam. Charyatam. Audasinyam abhipsyatam. Dasinyam abhipsyatam. Janakripa. Naishturyamutsrijyatam. Okay, so now if we're ready, we'll do all four verses together. Vedo nityamadhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushthiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papaugaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe dosho nusandhiyatam Atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam Sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksaramarthyatam shrutishiro vakyam samakarnyatam vakyarthasya vicharyatam shrutishiraf pakshas samashriyatam Dustarkat suviramyatam shrutimatas tarko nusandhiyatam brahmasmiti vibhavyatam aharahar garvah parityajyatam deheham matirujyatam buddhajanai vadah parityajyatam Kshutvyaadhishya chikitsatam pratidinam bhikshaushadam bhujyatam swadvannam natu yachyatam vidhivashat praptena santushyatam shitoshnati vishahyatam natu vrita vakyam samucharyatam Audasinyam abhipsyatam janakripa naishturyamutsrijyatam. All right. So we are seeing the evolution of the sadhaka developing introvertedness. Introvertedness. So in Shravana, it requires a certain level of introvertedness, maybe about, let's say, 40%, just for measurement's sake. That mind has to be able to go within, to quiet down, to be able to listen and understand. Then in Mananam requires further higher amounts. So now let's say about 60%. We now have to reflect upon that. Nididhyasanam requires quite a lot more. We become very subtle and very turned within because we are now trying to seek the self as a subjective experience. So that introvertedness is now almost like 80%, 90%. The more and more we practice, we're reaching 99%. When we saw last time the idea of like practicing cursive handwriting, right? In the beginning, it requires some effort, some diligent breaking of letters and slowly forming them. Then with enough patience, enough practice, it starts to flow. We say we have mastered cursiveness when in the heat of the moment, your hand reflexively is able to write in cursive. That's when you know you're fully established in that. It's the analogy to samadhi here is pushing from nididhyasanam into samadhi is like going from 99% introvertedness to 100%. Last bit is always the hardest. So along this way, the advice that is being given now, especially in verse 4, is how do we make that transition from high levels of introvertedness to complete introvertedness? There are so many obstacles that can come along and disturb that inward focus. We saw the tongue, or I'll say the stomach, the appetite, is the first source of distraction. Kshutvyaadhisya chikitsyatam pratidinam bhikshaushadam bhujyatam. It is not for one who is just starting that spiritual pursuit. This is a problem for even those that are in the final stages of polishing. So we saw that polishing here, we've come down to sandpaper and the polish liquid to make it shine. Even at this point, the mind, especially through its appetite, will become an obstacle. So we look to the others, Mahatmas that are there, and we observe their behavior, how they act in the world outside. They're siddhasya lakshanani sadhakasya sadhanani. Siddha, these are those that are in samadhi and are steady in that. Whatever qualities they exhibit, their lakshanas, those very lakshanas then become the sadhaka, the one who's striving for it, it becomes their sadhana. So again, siddhasya lakshanani, sadhakasya sadhanani. What are these attributes and what is the behavior we see now of these Mahatmas when it comes to food? What do we see them doing? They kshutvyaadhisya chikitsyatam. Hunger and disease, as promptly as they occur, without delay, address them like it's medicine. Pratidinam, every day. You cannot be exempt from this. And disease, as long as that disease is there, treat it for its full course daily until it has become resolved. Even at this highest level, we must learn to take care of ourselves. It is the price we have to pay having taken this birth. Now, think about how much time actually goes into taking care of this body. From morning till sleep, you have to bathe it, you have to wake it, you have to dress it, you have to feed it, you have to exercise it. Here it says, Shariram Madhyam Kula Dharma Sadhana. This body is the very first means of practicing spiritual discipline. If the body doesn't cooperate it, we've had it. Cooperation of the body is the most important thing. Therefore, every morning, along with my prayers, may I ask it, "Oh body, please cooperate today. I require you. I need you on my sadhana. Please be with me." So disease and hunger are those requirements that we really do have to take care of. The wear and tear is natural. As soon as the energy depletes, it will demand in the form of hunger and thirst. And when the body keeps working, it will constantly be asking for these things. When it has its own difficulties, defects, like becoming old or it becomes injured, these are things that do naturally happen. It's part of the course of using this body. May I take care and repair it with food, water, and medicine as is required. So that was the instruction given. What is the attitude we need to have now? That's given in the next pada where it says, Pratidinam bhikshaushadam bhujyatam. That's what we should do. And what we shouldn't do is the next one. Svadvannam natu yachyatam. So to practice the sadhana of food, there's a do and a don't. And this is specifically speaking about the mental attitude behind it. What we just saw was the physical. This is what I have to do. But when I'm doing it, what's the attitude? So what to do? Bhiksha aushadam. Accept whatever has been given by Bhagwan with equipoise, joy, and the attitude of gratitude. Oh, that rhymed. Attitude of gratitude. And at the same time, may I not seek or desperately seek swad annam. Isn't there an Indian brand called Swad. Very aptly named, that brand. Swad Annam, may I not go hanker after that. So pick a different brand. But here, it means that tasty food isn't actually easily available. In fact, you have an entire industry built around how difficult it is to find tasty food. You have the Michelin stars, program. Then you have Yelp to help you. Where is the good restaurants? Where are the bad restaurants? Finding tasty food actually requires effort. Don't waste it. Not to someone who is trying to practice nididhyasana. It's a waste of energy to try to seek out tasty food. So here we say, Katam idam sadhyan iti vichare sati. Meaning, when the thoughts go towards how do I get tasty food, when that kind of thought starts coming into the mind, know that Atma vichare naischalyam nasyat. Know that you will not be able to focus on Atma vichara. It is done. There was a very interesting story that went with it. As is tradition in Vedanta, there was once a Gurukula. There was once a guru with a shishya. Now the shishya was so good, so focused on this, that there was no complaints. Usually in the Gurukula systems, you have the guru, and the guru usually can be married, right? So she's known as the Guruma, the mother of the Gurukula. She's usually the one that helps cook or something during that time. And so she would cook every day for the student. Over time, all of a sudden, one day, he looks up at his Guruma and says, Amma, do you have a little bit more salt? This seems to be lacking today. The guru looked at him, the shishya, and said, you're done with studies. He's like, what? Oh, come on, it's not that bad. I just asked for salt. Why am I being punished like this? Why am I getting kicked out? He said, listen, this entire time, you have been eating the same food cooked by Guruma. She has never once put salt in your food before. You were so focused on Atma Vichara that this bhiksha became your aushadhi, you never paid attention. This is the first time your mind has wavered away from Atma Vichara and has recognized that there's no salt in your food. This is the subtlety they're talking about. The moment the mind gets distracted by food, know that Atma Vichara is done. You have now reverted back into your ego, hankering after the needs of, or the thirsts, desires for this, from this body. So he brought it into another example. Can I have coffee? And the Vedanta course is the best pressure cooker to understand your relationship with food. I have like 3 stories to come out of this. First one is when we want food, or when we want coffee. That's like the first tester, because we are forced to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to be able to come to class at 5:30. So there's still a tradition, even to this day, that they only give you chai in the morning. That too, this chai is water, flavored water is what I call it. Just water, sugar, and maybe a hint of milk, and it looks like chai, but it's not chai. So we get into this debate, and I've had this mental argument with myself. Why, if you're giving us caffeine anyways in the form of black tea, then what's stopping you from giving us coffee? Man, where is this? I can't wait for this Vedanta course to finish. But really speaking, when this swadvannam thirst is there, starting in that morning, you then come to 5 a.m. class, 4:30 a.m. class, and you're supposed to sit in the seat of meditation. Where is the mind? I wish I had coffee. Where is my coffee? How am I going to get coffee? Is there? We called it as contraband. You're not supposed to have anything other than what's given to you in the kitchen. If you manage to get it, then it's called contraband. And there are enough sevaks that come in the Vedanta course that take pity on us poor brahmacharis. We're rascals, actually. They'll ask, Brahmachari, do you need anything? Can I help offer? In their goodness, they will come and ask. He said, yes, there's something you can help us with. Like, oh, do you want a book? Do you want a pen? Do you need something? Do you have coffee? They're like, what kind of Vedanta course is this? What kind of brahmacharis are you guys raising here? This is how insidious the little thought of food can be. It can distract us so much from nididhyasana. So, the main important word is yachyatam. Don't hanker or beg for. See, it's not the physical taste, it's the mental state. The mental attitude of needing. Like, I can't live without that. That give up, yachyatam. Then, how am I supposed to help that idea along, to support it? What sort of feeling of santusha I'm supposed to gain? Vidhi vashat praptena santushyatam. Vidhi. Vidhi is prarabdha, your fate. But again, kind of jars me a little bit to use the word fate, because vidhi means janmantara krita. Krita means that which is done throughout many, many lives. What have we done? Sukrita and dushkrita. There are good things we've done, bad things we've done. We've done things that are a mixture of both. So many of these things have been done. According to that, results will come to me. Those results that come are known as my prarabdha. So that is why I feel iffy and hesitant to use the word fate or destiny, because we have the habit of using that sorry, my words are not flowing today. I'm using the word fate and destiny as an excuse to give up. What can I do? I'm like this. I was born like this. I'm fated to be like this. I can't give up food. It's my prarabdha to have in-laws like this. All sorts of ways we use destiny and fate as a way of saying there's no room for effort on my part, no room for responsibility. It's not on me, it's on Bhagwan, and who knows where he is. That's why I don't like to use the word destiny or fate. Here, vidhi or prarabdha means I am going to get what I'm owed. Puja Gurudev says we are the architects of our own destiny. So choose your actions wisely today, because you are going to set yourself up for tomorrow. So vidhi vashat. Vashat is whatever that is due. Paripakena. This is another good word. Paripakena. If we're in food, we might as well talk about it, right? Paka means to burn or boil or heat in such a way. Paripaka, meaning it is really well cooked. And I was trying to think about this, where it's, you know, the technique in cooking where a reduction sauce, I think is what it's called, where you let it simmer and sit on low heat for a long time. You can't take shortcuts there. You can't crank up the heat and says, can it be done in 5 minutes? It has to take 20 minutes on low heat for it to concentrate and become a thick sauce. This is what prarabdha is. Your ingredients is your actions you put in one day. Time slowly has cooked those results, and that paripaka has come to you now. Now, praptena, whatever you have gained, the food that you're getting has been written for you. It has been well cooked over a long time, and it has now arrived on your plate. And I think last week I quoted the Bollywood song, Dane Dane Pe Likha Hai, Khane Wale Ka Naam. Every grain of rice has our name written on it because we've done our actions in the past. Destiny is very, very strong when it comes to the matter of food, and specifically for matters of enjoyment. Sukha and dukkha are completely bound by destiny, and we can't escape it. So now, having attained it, what should be my attitude? Santushya, be content. Now be happy with what you have. That's usually the quickest translation. And now some neo-intellectual may prop up his head saying, you just said happiness is because of fate, and now you're asking me to be happy? What do you mean by this? Santusha here means that when we are experiencing the food, whether it's good, whether it's bad, there's a similar mental reaction. Another way to think about it, can I be as excited about bad food as I was with good food? Aha, laddus. Aha, karela. Do I have the same mental attitude between both of them? Do I have that samatvam? That's what santusha is about. So why are we looking at so much on food? This is, again, that major source of distraction. Not only, so the main point here is when someone can master the plate, they can master their mind. And we saw the example of the story of the father who forced his child to sit and finish whatever's on that plate. And when some uncle had objected, he said, look, if they can't command their likes and dislikes at whatever they receive on that plate, how can they command their likes and dislikes in the plate of the world, depending on whatever they receive? So our altar becomes that plate. Now, this bothersome attitude of food does in fact come up even at higher stages. And I'll have to go back to Puja Gurudev himself. If we've watched the On a Quest movie, I think there is an episode on the laddus that arrived in Uttarkashi. Do you remember this? Where someone had brought a basket of motichur ki laddu, the one like dripping with ghee. You know, food is really fun to think about, right? He brought that laddu all the way to Uttarkashi, where it is completely cold, completely barren of any vegetation. It's harsh living there, and you see these golden laddus sitting in a basket. So Guru had, Swami Tapovan Maharajji, what did he say? He asked one of the Shishyas, take this basket, I'll put it in my kutia and leave it there. So he didn't even distribute. We're like, Guru, it's prasada. Can't we have just a little bit? Put it in the kutia. Okay. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the laddus were never to be seen again, as if. These shishyas were getting so agitated. They're like, where are these laddus? They must have gone bad by now. In fact, some of them got really angry. Said, this guru is not a guru. He must be eating those laddus in his kutia. That's why he asked us to put it there. In fact, it was said that I think 2 shishyas or so left. They got so upset thinking that this guru is a fraud. Look at how he behaves around food. They left. Now think about this. These are shishyas that came to Tapovan Maharajji. And we remember, he said, I will ask you to leave if at any single point you are not able to answer correctly any question I ask you. I will ask you to leave if any time you ask me to repeat a concept. I will ask you to leave if you're not ready when I'm ready. So shishyas have to be up before the guru. They go to sleep after the guru. They have to be right behind the guru wherever they're traveling, because in a moment's notice, something may inspire that guru and start his teaching. That's the caliber of students that were standing there. That was the caliber of students that had issues with that laddu. 2 people left. Finally, just to rub salt in that wound, Swami Tapovan Maharaj, he said, bring those laddus out. Oh, finally, we passed the test. Do we get the laddus? No. He asked another shishya, he said, take this basket, take it to Ganga Devi and let it, submerge it into that, visarjan to that laddus. Let it go. Why? Because he was trying to show the shishyas, even after all of this effort, all of this tapas that you've gone through, look at how unstabilized your mind has become at this point. Enough you got upset with me. Enough that your Atma Vichara has come to a complete stop because of those stupid laddus. So, it is very valid that Adi Shankaracharya ji is bringing up this point in verse number 4, after having seen a student graduate through Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrataha, Guru surrender, then Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, then this advice is given. Let us not underestimate the power of this distraction. Then we see he continues this and expands that scope a little bit more. He says, Shitoshnadi Vishahyatam. This is now tackling disturbances at the level of Sharira, the body. Shita Ushna, hot and cold. Vishahyatam. The root word for that is sa. Saha means to bear or endure. You have to be accepting of whatever comes to the experience of the body. Not just the tongue now, we've now expanded it. Whatever may be the condition that this body is going through, learn to accept it. Now, some people out of ignorance and with lots of shraddha Ignorance plus Shraddha becomes a dangerous combination. They overdo it. They say, okay, I have to bear hot and cold. I will go to the Himalayas for 1 year, and then I'll go to the Sahara Desert another year. I will intentionally put myself through that pain. See, I'm a sadhaka. I'm doing sadhana. That's not the point. Here, don't seek out the extremes unnecessarily just to bear it. Know that whatever you were supposed to go through, it will come to you. Vidhi vashat praptena. It still applies here. Then visheshena. Root word was saha, bear it. But there's a prefix, vi. So it's an emphasis on that meaning. Visheshena means we give it extra emphasis. Don't just bear it, forbear it. Don't just endure it. I'm just messing with the English word here. So forbearance, what is so special about that? Here we say, parjanya sukha sat. Janya dukha samata. Some things we like, and when it happens, we're able to accept it. The same things, when we don't like it, that causes us pain, we're not able to accept it. That's the unsamatvam, the non-samatvam that we have. Learn that whatever comes, we're fine. This is what I was meant to have. This is what I was meant to experience. If I have to address it as a part of my responsibility, if I have to resolve it, I shall do my due diligence and do it. But if there's nothing I can do about it, all I'm left to do is bear with it. I am not going to be a child that will constantly fuss. It's not right, it's not this, I wish it wasn't, Mentally inside we're doing that, we're fussing constantly. That fussing has to calm down. It is what it is. Things shall pass. That is the one thing we can rely on. This vyavahara, change is the only changeless law of this world. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Until then, may I just live with it. Now, there is never a time when we will be free from discomfort. It is not possible. This was definitely a shift that I had to think about, where often when we're going through painful experiences and we know we have to bear it, we kind of like grit ourselves and like get into a defensive mode and like try to muscle through that, and we keep our eye on when will this moment pass. So I will bear it, but I'm always looking for when will it be over. Here, we will never become free from discomfort. It will always be one or the other. Instead, learn to not wait for the storms to pass, but learn to be the sunshine within that storm. I'm okay. No one can upset me. In fact, if pain is happening, okay, pain is happening. I am not going to get pulled into the level of body, mind, and intellect. I am okay. Waves can come, waves can go. Right in the middle of the peak of the pain, I am not disturbed. That's a whole different way of living. I'm not hoping for the end of something. I am good exactly where I am. So, when it comes to this idea that this pain will never end, Manushya body is very interesting. When we chant Gayatri Mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, you have the worlds above, you have the worlds below. Who's right smack in the middle? Bhuloka. And who is the best vehicle to live in this Bhuloka? The Chudamani of all beings in Bhuloka is this human body. We think, whenever we hear this human birth is greatest punya to have, it's actually a misnomer. Human birth is a product of both papa and punya. It is in perfect balance. That is why throughout life there will be joys and sorrow. They both come together. During the Vedanta course, even Swami Prakashanji said, any act we perform will have both dharma and adharma in it, built into it. Some form or the other, there will always be checks and balances for each other. So for example, if you're doing homa, right, that's considered as a great punya karma. But when you're offering that wood into the fire, are there not living creatures within that wood? bacteria, little wood insects. When you offer that, aren't you killing? So are you doing punya or papa? Both. That's the complexity of life, and human beings are right smack in the middle. We will have both. The point to understand this is that never try to sit there hoping for a future that has no discomfort. That's not going to be guaranteed. Don't linger in the past trying to revel in the good things and, brood over the bad things. That's dead and gone. It's not going to happen again. In this moment, I am perfect exactly where I am. That is the true essence of samatvam and santosha. So I had seen our Swamiji, if he's going through like physical pain, and if there's politics happening all at once, and then on top of that something else is happening, he's taken on I'm like, Swamiji, how do you deal with all this? He's like, what? Enjoy the rain while it's here. Let it come. Do I have that inner sanctum sanctorium inside within that I am Paramatma, I am that self that is unchanging? These variations and pains and experience belong to the body, mind, and intellect. I am not it. Do I have that sanctity within that I'm seated within? That is Nididhyasana. May I not get distracted by those around me. Now, moving on, that was the physical, sharira. Next one, we come back to the tongue again. This time, not for food, this time for speech. This is that's why we have to be really careful of that tongue. It is both ingoing and outgoing. So now we're tackling the function of speech. How does that become a distraction? Natu vrita vakyam samucharyatam. Do not speak a sentence in vrita. Purposelessness or uselessness. Don't even speak a single useless word. Well, that's hard to do. Even sitting up here having notes in front of me, I catch myself saying, and then I have to go back and look at something and repeat a question. I know I'm wasting a lot of words up here. In fact, Shastras, when we're reading Ramayana, Swami Prakashanji have always said, pay attention to the language. There is never a point or a word repeated without usefulness. If you see a line being repeated, pay attention. This is the level of attention and carefulness that our shastras, our culture, and our tradition is built around. Let us never waste anything. So, vritha, vyartham, or vi plus artham. Sorry, I had to break down that particular word. Vi plus artham. Artha means meaning, and vi means without meaning. So, vrita, vyartham, that's where the Sanskritam word comes from. Now, why is this so important? This tongue can get us into trouble in so many different ways. And I'm speaking about speech. There's a saying here, jihvagre vasate lakshmi. Jihvagre mitra bandhava. Jihvagre bandhanam prapti. Jihvagre maranam dhruvam. Jihvagre, on that tip of that tongue, resides Lakshmi, meaning wealth can be made or distributed because of the power of speech. The tongue can maintain friendships and relatives. The tongue can also be the source of bondage or freedom. The tongue can also invite death itself. This is the power behind that tongue. If we see carefully, relationships start with speech. And if you want to end the relationship, end the speech. Why? Because when you first start off, you say, hi, or here, Hari Om, how are you? Beginning of speech, there's a connection that's formed. Now, if you want to end that conversation, I don't really want to talk to you, I don't really want to get to know you, what will you do? Hari Om, fine. End. But if you want to continue, Hari Om, yes, I'm doing fine. How are you doing? Where are you from? And then you continue that conversation going forward. So speech makes and breaks relationships. If, there's another trick here, in a relationship, when they give space for speech, it further deepens. So for example, if you were to pick up the phone and you offer yourself saying, I'm like this, I'm vulnerable, you express your personality a little bit, and then you leave room, that person might take that invitation and fill that gap with speech of their own personality. Then a little bit more, give and take, but it's on the transaction of speech. So when we get into family feuds, when we get into friendship feuds, we said, I thought you were my friend, I thought I could say anything I want and you wouldn't take it too seriously. Careful. Friendships and relationships are built on speech. When we have trouble at home and we say, I don't know how to talk to them. They seem to get upset when I say this a certain way. I don't know how to change. Yes, we do have to work on that speech. Be careful. Natu vrita vakyam samucharyatam. May not a single word be used out of place because it will cause a lot of problems and further chaos. In Gita, they give a guideline when it comes to speech. Satyam hita priyam. May it be always truthful. May I never deviate from the very nature of things. Then use that truth when it's beneficial and when it's not. If it's not beneficial, even if it's true, let it go. There's no need to use those words. And finally, when it has to be said, may it be said in such a way that it's received correctly on the other side, that it has the beneficial effects in its delivery. So this becomes really important when it comes to dealing with children, is it not? When we have to teach them, may our teachings be truthful in alignment with Vedas. May it be said at a point that is useful for them. And most difficult part, may I say it in such a way that they are actually able to accept it. Why did you go out with them at 11 o'clock at night? I told you to come home. Why are you doing this? Who are you with? Where did you go? What did you say? What are your child going to do? Nothing. Nowhere. No one. They'll stop the conversation right there. But instead, having observed this, are you okay? Is everything all right? Safe? Okay, good. Let them sleep. Next day, come back. Okay, so tell me, I was concerned, I was afraid when I didn't hear from you. To help me calm down, can you tell me what happened? Just so I know you're okay. Okay, next time this happens, how can we work on not being in this situation again? You tell me what you think. Much calmer, in a non-emergency mode, with a calm voice. Oh, that requires so much self-control, so much maturity on our part. The kid may explode. Mom, you're always like this. I know you're speaking calmly, but you're always like... They'll throw up volumes there too. But satyam, hita, priyam. These are my guidelines. May I never waste a single word while I'm performing karma yoga. So I'm taking this example because we may not experience nididhyasana, but see how these values still become sadhanas in the beginning? If we can work on it from the beginning, by the time we get to nididhyasana, my precision and perfection on speech will be on point, as Gen Z might say. So, he has come to this final state of nididhyasana. Even at this point, we are given this advice, be careful. Now, zooming out a little bit, we saw from the tongue in terms of jnanendriyas, to receive taste. We saw the tongue in terms of karmendriya as speech. Then we expanded that to any sort of experience from the body, mind, and intellect level. May I always be that samatvam. He gives another emphasis where he says, Audasinyam abhipsyatam. Udasinasya bhavaha. This state of indifference, udasina. Abhipsyatam means to desire to achieve this state of indifference. And this is at the level of the mind and the intellect. This is now the third layer. Now here, someone can disrespect me, I will remain calm and indifferent. And it is that same kind of samatvam I should bring to joys as well. When someone, oh, you're such a great person, I respect you so much, you have such great qualities. This little, we straighten up, we get a little taller, and we become a little bit proud of ourselves. That is not indifference. When someone criticizes us, you speak horribly, you don't know what you're talking about, who do you think you are? Then we start to shrink down and saying, we might accept it and feel hurt, or we might get angry trying to reject that idea. But we've become upset either way. Both of those reactions is what we have to maintain and keep in control. Now, others may take this udasina as being someone who's a stone. He's so stoic, he's so indifferent to this world, who, it doesn't feel like living. Why should I be like this? Again, we have to come back to the context we're in. This is nididhyasana. So we have done enough in this world, we have interacted with the world long enough that we have done our due diligence. We have done karma yoga, we've gone through grahastha ashrama, we've gone through upasana and vanaprastha as well. We are now in the mode of actually withdrawing, relaxing, and stabilizing. So at this point, udasina, to become indifferent, is okay. In fact, that is what's prescribed. Now, this is especially emphasized when it comes to this last statement. When we say udasina, become indifferent, jana kripa naishturya mutsrijyatam. Jana kripa. Now, jana kripa is, jana means people. Kripa is, they translate it as compassion, but it's more like involvement. What do I mean by that? If something were to happen to you, if like a kid trips and falls in front of you, oh, I'm so sorry, are you okay? Let me help you up. This sudden pity, compassion really is our involvement in wanting to help. That kripa, naishturya. Naishturya means criticism. It's the flip side, either compassion or hatred towards someone, me criticizing others. Both things, naishturya mutsrijyatam. May I give up both of them? The point here is, may I not linger in involvement. May I not linger in involvement, because the more I invest myself in a certain situation, the more that ego will rise up. When I linger, there's a sense of possessiveness. The mind then becomes preoccupied with that situation and that individual. Now I've come back into this sense of individuality. So Shastra says, it doesn't outright say don't be kind. It says be kind, but don't get too involved. It prompts the ego once more. And really, if we think about it, it's this self-satisfying. I feel good when I help someone out. That I feel good is the problem. Not at this stage. So, there are two examples that come up when it comes to kripa and naishturya. At this stage of someone in nididhyasana being involved. Who is the example for kripa? The inappropriately used moments of kripa. It comes from Bhagavatam. Jada Bharata. Jada Bharata. Bharata was one who was very valorous in his command over his kingdom. He was the perfect king. He was the perfect example of karma yoga. Janak Maharaji also comes into mind when I think of this. Who was so involved in his responsibility, purified himself to such a good extent that at the end of his reign, he truly gave up his kingdom. He passed it on saying, I'm done with this. He left his lifestyle, he left his comforts, went into the forest, having received the jnanam, the knowledge of the highest. He said, I am now ready for nididhyasanam and samadhi. Perfect example of a sadhaka. And he was seated on the banks of the river, fully immersed in the advanced stages of nididhyasanam. But what happened? He heard the roar of a tiger and the yelping of a mother deer. And I can bear with giving a little bit more graphic details. We simplify this for our kids. But it is said that it was a pregnant mother deer that was jolted with so much fear out of hearing that tiger's roar that she jumped into the river, and in that river, she gave birth to that baby deer. And she ran off and she was no more seen. This baby deer was so helpless, like birth, just out of the womb, struggling to breathe, drowning in this river, is what was in front of Bharata. Out of his nididhyasnam he comes and he says, oh dear, may I take up this deer? And he pulls that deer and got involved. This is kripa at this point. So that in entirety is not the problem. What happened was he now started taking care of that deer, raising it, and it was said at one point he has a japa mala in one hand and the hand stroking the deer on the other one. This distraction was enough to cause him to be reborn one more time as Jada Bharata. Someone who was able to exhaust all vasanas, exhaust his entire kingdom and role and personality, come to the last point, 99.9%, and this kripa came in the way, making him take birth once more, one more lifetime because of that deer. That's why he's known as Jada Bharata. That kripa came at that point and distracted him from his nididhyasnam. Now, what about naishturya, this criticism? Say that again? In this context, for what Bharata was achieving, that kripa was not helpful. I will refuse to answer according to your terms because those terms are too limiting. Meaning, see, kripa in itself, when we're performing karma yoga, that kripa has to be there, that compassion has to be there. Out of love is why we do that, right? But now, having served all in grihastha ashrama through karma yoga, we've completed chitta shuddhi. We have come to the point of withdrawal. So now think of examples of Mahatmas who have renounced the world and have left society and have gone into the seat of meditation. For them, coming back into involvement is a problem. That's the most important thing. Okay, fair enough. So here, I was going to get to this point along this. Bhagwan's involvement in nididhyasnam, because you're kind of going along that line. When we are prodding along in our sadhana, Bhagwan will provide the right environment for the right stage. One of the most important lessons that will come up is we never want to become recluse until we're ready. Bhagwan also will not let you become a recluse until you're ready. So these instances in the Bhagavatam and all these, when these occurrences happen, they were meant to test the sadhaka to see if they are advanced in their state or not. So in this case, the incident of the deer had to happen in front of Bharata to see where he was at. He was allowed, if you can say, allowed to help the deer come out of the river. But where was his problem? He started taking care of that deer more and more, and the real root problem was his attachment that formed with that deer. The attachment is the key. Yes. And that's what's being indicated here. Kripa is the mental state. We talked about body. We're now looking at mind and intellect, what's going on inside. That is what has to be dealt with. The opposite now also is there. Naishturya, criticism. This comes from the story of Nahusha. Nahusha was a great scholar and he wanted to prove his greatness to the world. And so he asked, I think there was a Devi that he wanted to ask that he be served. The Devi said, there's only one condition that I will serve you. This entire world has to praise you. He says, okay, how do you want me to be praised? Like, how do I execute this? She said, have the rishis, like Agastya Muni, all of them to come and praise you by carrying you in a palanquin. This was the test she gave him. He said, okay, sure, I'll do it. And so he went to these rishis and said, I would like you to lift me in that palanquin. Will you do it? In their compassion and whatever, they said yes. But Agastya Muni specifically, he was carrying the back corner of the palanquin, and his mind was reveling in Brahmasmi, and he was walking a little bit slower and out of cadence with the other three. And the king Nahusha sitting in the palanquin said, Sarpaha, Sarpaha. Sarpa has two meanings. One is hurry up, go. The other meaning is Sarpa, the snake. So Agastya Muni in that moment said, Sarpoha, and you become that snake. So in that shapa, in that criticism, because he became angry, the next life he took the form of a snake. So the illustrations here is all about that mental state. I'm glad you asked me that question, because it's really not about the physical actions that are happening, but what is the mental state that gets triggered behind those actions. When someone is overly involved, that ego comes up. That sense of wanting to feel better, that self-satisfaction, the ego keeps rising up. These are the challenges in its form that comes up, which is why in verse number 4 we see this advice, Audasinyam abhipsyatam janakripa naishturya mutsrijyatam. At this point, we want to make sure that we don't allow ourselves to come out of the bhava of Brahmasmi. To never forget that I am not this body, mind, and intellect. More importantly, I am not this ego. So anything that will pull me in that, may I beware and keep protected and maintain that nididhyasana. That's the bhava behind all of these warnings at this point. So, yes. Yes. Huh.
The story went like one day the deer found a deer.
One second. May I address one thought with that before we move on? And I have to wrap up real quick. Just one thought here. Where we're heading in Sadhana Panchakam right now is from Nididhyasanam into Samadhi. We still have to talk about Samadhi. Samadhi is the culmination and complete success of this entire sadhana. So when you mentioned that state, stitaha, they have now complete abidance in who they are. They don't struggle to maintain that ego or the absence of that ego. So therefore we see Gurudev, Mahatmas, Swami Vivekananda, all these realized masters coming back into the world and serving. That is different from this kripa, because they are completely established in who they are and have absolutely no reluctance. They never come back out of that state. That is completion, 100%. Here, we're still sitting in nididhyasanam trying to achieve samadhi. So there's still a risk left. That is why these warnings are given. Remember not to get that ego to come back. You have still yet ways to go until you've become realized. Verse 5 will explain what is the true state of samadhi, that from which no one returns from. So there's a tipping point we have to keep in mind. So I hope that clarified that subtle difference why Jada Bharata had to remain. He fell. But Gurudev and others, when they come back and get involved, they don't fall. What's that subtle difference? It's the difference between nididhyasanam and samadhi. I hope I just wanted to make that clear. Yes? Yes, exactly. So with that, good questions. With that, let's do closing prayers, and we shall continue this next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om